what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to the first episode ever of the Sound Table. I am here with my man Noah.
Noah, I am the editor of Green Tea Magazine.
My guy Joey.
DJ and art director of Green Tea Magazine.
What's your name, though?
My name's Joey.
All right. I love it. And I'm your boy Drew. If you don't know me, I'm a curating events guy from Seattle, H206 Events. We came together out of COVID. We all needed to pivot, and we created this brand new platform called Sound Table. We have I don't even want to get into the guests yet. I just want to let you know we've been working on this for months, right? Yeah. Interviewing some dope people, talking about issues that are affecting us today. But before we get into that, I got to give a quick shout out to our guest DJ in the building, the world famous DJ Roscoe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see you. Hey, we don't have that copyright money yet. We're working on that.
We'll get there.
So we gonna throw some music in that later. I'm just keeping it 100. All right, I'm just keeping it real. So about today's episode, all right, we, because of COVID, had to do some pre-recording, but through our contacts, shout out to our man Jason Hicks. He's out here with us. Yeah. Our first episode coming up. Our guest is none other than I don't even know how to get started. He's has 3 Ivy League degrees. He has written books, accomplished author. He has a podcast. What was the name of his podcast? Legal Wars.
Yeah, that was one of them.
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, on Wondery, exactly. So what I'm talking about, my man, no other than Hill Harper. All right, Hill Harper is the star of the ABC show The Good Doctor. Also graduated Harvard with Obama. Shout out to Obama. Don't hate. But we have a great interview with him where we discuss things that matter, like the social justice movement that's taking place right now and Black Lives Matter movement. Stay tuned. The interview is dope. And when we're done, we're going to come back and have a panel discussion about it. All right? See you guys in a few. Hey, what's up, everybody? We want to welcome you back to the Sound Table. We have a special guest with us today, Hill Harper. For you guys that don't know who Hill Harper is, he was born in Iowa City, Iowa. His father was a psychiatrist. His mother was one of the first Black anesthesiologists in the United States of America. He has 3 Ivy League degrees from Brown and Harvard and was a classmate of Barack Obama. He befriended him and ended up playing basketball with him from time to time. Now, he is an actor. Some of you guys may know him as Booger from He Got Game. He had other notable roles in Skulls, All Eyes on Me, and now he plays Dr. Marcus Andrews on The Good Doctor, which is ABC's #1 top drama. Hill Harper, we want to thank you for being here with us. Did I do you justice in reading all that?
That was a great intro. Happy to join you guys. Absolutely.
All right. Welcome to Green Tea / Almost Live, the Sound Table.
I had green tea today, by the way. It was infused with a little pineapple. It was very nice.
Ooh, okay.
Well, we'll make sure to send you over a stack of some other green teas.
Okay.
To read through later. So.
So today's topic, Noah, you want to go into that? Let them know what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so today the topic is what's next, really. So, maybe you changed your profile picture to a black square. Maybe you attended a Black Lives Matter protest or took action in that sort of way. What is next for people, whether it be people who are part of the movement or people who may not be as familiar with the movement? What's next for people to engage, and what's the next course of action? And that's a big part of the topic today, and we wanted to dig into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah. So essentially, my man Joey put it best: how to be an ally, and that's what myself personally. I've received tons of text messages or DMs like, "Hey, I'd love to get involved," and ways to get involved, and essentially for my friends that are not Black. Trying to figure out how to be a good ally. We know you do some great things in the community. You're a scholar. You're well respected. in a lot of circles. So we figured you'd be the perfect person to reach out to and get some ideas on how people can be a better ally.
Well, let's have a conversation. I like it.
All right.
Yeah,
So-
one of the main things that we want to get is how to be an effective ally, and I think it's a big question that a lot of people are kind of wondering. Even when we try to be a good ally, someone like myself, I did the march, I did the 5K, I bought the T-shirt, but I also want to know what's an effective step to be a helpful ally and not someone who just ends up coming across as someone who might be appropriating the movement or being a culture vulture or someone who's seen as virtue signaling. What's the real way to support it?
Right. Well, I think that there's different pathways. There's a multiplicity of pathways for people for allyship. But to be honest, I don't love the word ally because sometimes it sort of brings up the notion that it's on you to solve it, but I'm going to be there next to you. I got your back. When white supremacy, you're talking about 400 years of white supremacy and institutional racism is perpetrated by white folks. And so I need white people to be more than an ally. I actually need them to be the leader to dismantle those institutions. And so to me, it's about actually maybe I need an investor. Maybe that's the word. I need someone to invest in me and Black folk and saying, hey, I want to invest in attempting to uplift this marginalized community. I want to invest my time, money, ideas, thoughts in disrupting and dismantling institutions of systemic racism that I know exist. And so when you think about that, rather than being an ally is a little bit more passive. Investing is a little bit more active. And it's just like, in Seattle, there's a lot of tech entrepreneurship, right? And so the idea being, people don't go to actually be disruptive or start a business and say, I want to be an ally. They say, oh, what are we going to develop to actually create disruption or change? That's the mindset I'd like to, the question to ask is, what is it going to take to disrupt notions of what's possible? And what can we do together, investing in each other to help make that happen?
What about the average citizen? Maybe someone who feels like they might not have that investing power, but they still want to be supportive and do what they can. What would be the best way for the average person to approach that?
Right. I don't want, when I say invest, I don't want that to people to take that to mean money. It's investing ideas, energy. It's to me, you can actually break people down into three categories when we're talking about this issue around race. Okay. There are racists, there are non-racists, and there are anti-racists.
Bingo. Love it.
So the vast majority of people in the country fall into the category of non-racist, right? They say, well, I don't use the N-word, I don't do bad things to Black people, or I don't do this. I don't see color. I'm cool with everybody. I have my best Black friends. I'm a non-racist. That's, to me, the goal of this movement is to convert as many non-racists into anti-racists. In other words, we need more anti-racists, more people that are actively anti-racist and are willing to speak truth to power when they're in a situation. Like, as a Black person, I'm not really around when people are throwing around the N-word and talking this and saying all this crazy stuff that is inherently racist, right? But my white colleague, my white friend, my white, buddy needs to be willing to not just say, in his mind, dang, that guy's, I'm not gonna be like that guy. Actually say, no, hey, that language is not appropriate. In fact, if you're gonna continue to use it, let me school you about some things. This is, 400 years ago, this is what happened. This dude's like, whoa, man, don't school me. No, obviously you need to be schooled, because if you're using language like that, you don't understand what 400 years of historic white supremacy is. Yeah. What are you, man? Oh, you must be an anti-racist. That's exactly what I am. Well, I don't see color, dude. Well, obviously you do. It's that type of uncomfortable exchanges that folks are willing to have. So when I say invest, I'm not talking about money necessarily. I am talking about the average person. Invest your energy to move from being a non-racist to an anti-racist.
I think that's
I
a
love
great
that.
distinction. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. Let's talk about some of the projects that you're working on right now in the community. I know you've done stuff with the COVID regarding, I believe, delivering water. Am I correct?
Yeah, to Flint, Michigan. I started because I went to law school and I never really used my law degree traditionally, but I started a social justice law group a few years ago because I really felt that most marginalized communities under-index in terms of tort harm and going after people, particularly in the environmental space. It's so ironic to me that when we talk about the environmental movement, the people who experience by far the biggest harm of destructive environmental policies are poor folks and poor communities. Yet the movement is really led by and associated with wealthier white folk. Yet, and I really wanted to dig in deeper why it's difficult to get poor communities to use tort law and sue for the harm they've experienced. And in fact, I had this eye-opening conversation with this actuarial guy from a chemical company that I won't name, but he basically said, off the record, man, we actually do actuarial studies about where we're going to locate certain things because we know that if we polluted Beverly Hills, 99% of the people there would sue. But if we pollute Flint, Michigan, 15% of people sue. It costs us much less to do what we do in poor areas and poor communities. So I wanted to work on getting more folks who are marginalized to be more tortious, to be willing to sue and sign up for lawsuits. And so we've been doing that work in Flint. And then what happened, I met so many people signing people up for the lawsuit in Flint to sue for the harm they've experienced. They hit me during COVID and they're like, Hill, it's a water desert. We can't drink the water that's coming out of our pipes because that's bad water. And even in the wealthy communities, there was no water on the shelves. We don't have any water. What can you do? So I put together a GoFundMe. The first goal was $24,000, and then we raised it to $50,000. We blew through that, and we were able to deliver well over 20,000 gallons of fresh water to the community. And that's just literally, it's nothing to cheer about. It's a Band-Aid of the issue, but at least people had fresh water. The lines were 2.5 hours long to pick up this water. It just shows you the level of harm these people have experienced. And so we're still fighting the good fight. Every Sunday, I do a Facebook Live town hall talking about the Flint water crisis and trying to keep people in the community. It's really for the community to be able to air their grievances and talk. And so we're doing work in Flint that I'm very proud of.
All right. That's beautiful.
I have a question for you. How in the world do you stay so involved with everything you have going on between all of the social projects that you're involved with in your acting career? And one of my favorite parts about your career, your podcasting career. Are you still doing the Legal Wars podcast? Because that's incredible.
The Legal Wars was such a good podcast.
It's so good.
And we had to stop it, to be honest, because it required so much research, and so much time to put those episodes together that the Wondery who did the podcast, they had done a podcast called Business Wars, which is a very popular podcast. So they were like, well, let's do Legal Wars and we'll get Hill. And, he went to law school and just the level of research and work that went into them made the podcast so costly as far as researchers and writers and all these things that there's no way it wasn't sustainable, and
I think the world could use it right now with so many cases to be able to use that platform for maybe, cases that are more focused on things that are happening in the current environment right now.
Absolutely.
With the Bail Project and other things like that.
Without question. Maybe we'll do some specials or, I don't know, but I think they wanted to table it for a while and just see if maybe there was a way to do it for less expensive,
If you're looking for a new platform or a new set of producers.
Okay, we'll hold you to that because listen, it's possible. We might have to change the name, but we could potentially do it. It might be. It would be like when Coming to America, when my man he had McDowell's and McDowell's. We call it Legal Wars with the O. It's like,
With an O.
what is legal wars?
With a Z, a O and a Z, a wall.
The Z. Legal
Added that to
Wars
it.
with Hill Harper, the new podcast.
Yes.
The world needs it,
Oh
man.
man. Question for you. So, what you're doing in Flint is amazing. Like absolutely amazing. You're literally one person doing a lot of things, and we appreciate that. What with the defunding the police, with the Black Lives Matter, with the everything that's going on right now, because I feel like Black America was hit with two pandemics at the same time. One has been going on for 400 years, which is racism coming back, right? And then, of course, this pandemic on top of it with COVID-19. What are you doing regarding the current movement of Black Lives Matter? Like, where have you lent your voice, your energies, and things along that line?
Well, you know, there's so many different ways to get in and help the BLM movement. And it sort of relates back to what Joey was saying earlier. Since there's so many different ways and so many different things any of us can do, my whole thing is I just ask the question of what makes my heart beat faster, meaning what gets me, what makes that hair on the back of my neck stand up. And if that's what it does, then that's where I should put my effort and my energy, and that goes for anything. So why do I do this stuff in Flint? Flint was important because once you start seeing that poor Black and brown folks are dying at COVID at twice the rates of other folks, then doing something about the health of a community that fits that profile. Flint's one of the poorest cities in this country. You got to do something, and that's what got me going about Flint. Now, as far as other elements of the movement, one thing that gets my heart going faster is always hearing the data that comes back about the Black and white wealth gap, because we have to ask where are we headed and what can we do? Well, one thing that, one of my books was about financial literacy. I do a lot of financial literacy work with young people. And I really think that a lot of root-based issues come back to this simple fact that poor and marginalized communities have been preyed upon, literally vulturized, and they're the folks that can afford it the least. In other words, most of those places are bank deserts. You got to go to a payday lender or a check cashing spot to get your money from when you work. So your paycheck's already low, but then you got to pay 18-20% to someone just to give you access to the cash, or get on a bus or travel an hour just to get to a bank that's going to charge you these high banking fees because your account balance is too low. I mean, it's expensive to be poor, and you can't be free if the cost of being you is too high. And for too many poor people and folks that are marginalized, if you just look at what percentage they're paying in car insurance or any type of insurance, what percentage they're paying in rent and groceries and all of these different things that go out the door, then you wonder, there's no way. How could they even participate in wealth building structures? And so a lot of my work is focused on that. I'm working on some new technology actually that hopefully is going to address some of those problems, because technology offers a lot of opportunity to do a lot of pushing lies and pushing hate, but it also can do the reverse. It can organize in an inexpensive way, breaking down barriers to entry for folks if it's offered in a way that's not vulturizing the community. So I've been trying to work in that space as well. And those are just things that happen organically because that's what I get into. And I think that's what everybody should do. Everyone does not have to do the same thing. If you're a great engineer and a coder and that's your thing, then call me, because you'll be doing BLM work with me, because that's what I'm trying to do. But if you're better, with boots on the ground at a protest and then doing things around voter registration and or someone's going to run for office and be a new voice in politics, do that. In other words, we all have our different roles to fill, and I think that we should do that and follow those roles.
I love that targeted approach you have towards things. I was listening to an interview with you earlier this week where you're talking about your view on college and how people should be able to study the things that they want to study and not worry about so much about studying for the thing that they're going to have to do as a job later, but study things that they're interested in, that they may want to work with in the future. And kind of seeing those things break down into algorithms of things that you're working on seems very do this that can cover a lot of the wide bases in general. What would you say is like the first step to making active change within your community for the better?
I think the first step is creating a blueprint or a plan. I think that too often, we know intuitively what we want to see happen, but we are not strategic. And it seems like the opponents are always so strategic. In other words, if you just take a step back and you say, dang, your behavior is so heinous because it is so strategic.
Yeah.
You literally will lie out your face purposely because you're setting this up for that. I mean, I go back to when, people were talking about the whole birther movement of our 44th president. I mean, all of that was strategically planned and NRA. I mean, we could go down the list of all these strategies that folks who have antithetical thoughts or beliefs to mine, yet my community and folks who seem to be more progressive are like, well, if you just do the right thing, you'll get the right results. Like, we need a plan or a strategy to actually build something. And then you create a foundation upon which to build a movement. And I think that a lot of that is happening. I mean, look at so much activism, particularly from young people. It's really planned really well, and it's really strategic. And I think that, even looking at the wonderful work the LGBTQ plus community has done as far as strategy around actually having their issues put to the forefront and doing that work. It's so important to have effective plan and strategy to have impact. And there's plenty of playbooks on it, but we have to be willing to actually implement the strategy and have a blueprint.
And then follow it through.
Great. Great point.
Okay.
I had so I wanted to go back to something you said earlier. It's crazy. Not many people associate environmentalism with the poor and affecting people of color. It's kind of a standalone issue when it's not. When I look into things like the Equal Justice Initiative, it's the same thing. It affects people of color and it affects poor people. I grew up very poor, so I understand like that there's so much divisiveness in the world right now. What can we do when so many of these issues, the underlying people affected, are the poor people and people of color? How do you get those people? Because I feel like we're the majority. The poor people and the people of color are the majority. How do you get those people to set aside their differences and make change? Because I can't tell you how many times I see on social media it's a poor white person versus a person of color, and they don't understand. They have more alike than they have different from each other.
Yeah, it's really incredible, and it kind of goes back to the strategic point I was making before. There clearly has been a long-term strategy in place to make sure that racial strife amongst poor and marginalized communities occupies their attention. I mean, even if you just turn on social media and you just look at these folks arguing with each other and yelling and screaming racial epithets, these are by and large the people who are boots on the ground, are not necessarily the wealthiest white folks out there, holding up Confederate flags and all that and being, mini militias, right? And what's interesting about that is that you're absolutely right. The poor person in very conservative West Virginia has much more in common, and their interests are much more in common with a very poor person in Flint, Michigan, a black person in Flint, Michigan, than they really understand. Yet they feel like they're extremely different, and we can do. I mean, my whole thing is, I think there's a wonderful Bishop William Barber, who runs the Poor People's Campaign, does a great job of just allowing folks to speak. What we have to do more of is give more poor and marginalized folks and communities the ability to come on shows like this, the ability to amplify their voice so that folks can hear it. Because people are, what's the best way to put it? People from marginalized communities have been abused for so long. It's just like that scientific experiment where if you shock a dog once, he jumps, shock him twice, he jumps. You keep shocking him over and over, it stops moving less to the point where you could literally keep the same level of shock, and the dog will stop moving. Marginalized communities have been hurt and hit and vulturized so much that they don't trust anybody, and they shouldn't. And so the guy in West Virginia needs to hear from the woman in Flint and hear what her issues and problems are: healthcare, jobs, how much money goes to just necessities and how much little is left over at the end. And she needs to hear about his life and what he's going through. And they say, oh, wow, really? You go through that? But we don't give them the platform.
Yeah.
I'd like to amplify. Part of the work I try to do with my little Facebook Live thing on Sundays in Flint is to just try to amplify people, let them talk, and we want to hear more from folks and give them more platform that they otherwise don't have.
What it sounds like you're talking about is representation, whether it's representation in media, in legislature, or in the community. What do you feel like is the most important place to have representation right now?
Whew, man. I think all of it matters without question, and they're all working important lanes and different lanes. But at the end of the day, I think that, again, it goes kind of back to that investing point that I made at the beginning.
Yeah.
If we need to create new institutions. We need to, if folks are motivated to do something and whatever within an existing institution, representation certainly matters. Being in the, let's take a line from Hamilton. Being in the room where it happens matters, right? And so without question. But to me, building brand new institutions and creating new language to create real systemic change, to me, is as vital, if not more vital. I want to create new owners, new ownership. I want to create new things, new institutions, because the end of the day, even using the language and definitions of the oppressor is still falling into a systemic trap in certain ways. And there's a way to really create new opportunities, new language, new institutions, new businesses, new ways of educating folks, new pathways that I believe in. A lot of it goes back to technology. It really does. I mean, we've seen this explosion of hate because technology has been used to create so much division. The question is, can those of us who are free thinkers and want to see togetherness and collective action use those same tools of division to sow and create tools of collective coming together? Dr. King said we're all tied together in a single garment of mutual destiny. And we use technology to create a new garment that is all of us on here and everybody who's watching, our destinies are inextricably linked. And let's actually embrace it and figure out ways to support each other and elevate.
That's awesome. So I know we don't want to take up a bunch of your time. I mean, this has been some great conversation. We want to thank you for coming on the sound table with us and discussing this, because literally I'm over here taking notes. You've said more than a word. You're preaching right now. Before you go though, investing is the key term. I love that. Not being an ally, but being an investor in the community, investor and invest in what you want to see going forward. Well, off the top of the dome, if you can you give us 2 or 3 things that you are, or whether it be organizations, whether it be books to read, something that they can invest in to help them on their path?
Wow. Yeah. This may sound crazy and out of left field, but there was a book that was recently recommended to me to read called The Lean Startup. And I believe you could apply almost all those principles into a movement or your own activism or your own journey to becoming anti-racist and then converting other non-racists into anti-racists. I mean, the idea is it's don't think that you can't create something. Just you can create a movement. We all can. And then as we come together, if you keep your door wide open, we can create this wave. I am I'm working on something that I want to launch. And if there's anybody out there who wants to join me that's particularly tech side, or keep checking in on my Instagram once I launch it, which will probably be right after the election, I want people to come with me on it. It's going to be dealing with wealth gap stuff. It's going to be dealing with investment. It's going to be dealing with financial literacy and attempting to lessen the burden on poor and marginalized communities on what they spend. So that's one thing I'm doing. But part of that work is finding partners.
Yeah.
And all of us, no matter what your thing is, find a partner. And more of us need to run for office. I want to go back to that. More people. I just want to say, you know what? Schools suck. I want to be on the school board. Run. The city's messed up. I want to be on city council. Run. There are committees. There are all sorts of things that you can do to be a public servant and public service. And so here's the sad thing. So few people vote in local elections that anybody can run and win. If you're super strategic and you have a plan in place. And so don't stop yourself if you had an intuition that that's the way you want to serve, because we certainly need more diversity. 80% of DAs across the country run unopposed every year, yet we want to see police reform and police change. Part of the way to change is to completely change the DAs and have them start charging felonious officers with felony murder. You start consistently charging officers felony murder, their behavior will alter. I mean, that's just it. There's been no penalty for poor behavior. If you actually start creating penalty for very poor military style policing, then there's going to be a behavior shift. And I'm not saying that that's the only way to solve it, but that's one way. Yet 80% run unopposed. So we have to understand that all these mechanisms are working in concert to create the reality we're in, and we can disrupt all of those.
That is awesome. So, fellas, anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and giving us that insight. It gave us a lot to think about. And, I think overall it's be the change that you want to see in the world. And it sounds like, you're doing a lot to achieve that. And, again, I was taking notes with Drew. And so thank you so much for giving us all that ammunition and coming back stronger for our future episodes.
Absolutely. I try to read all my DMs. I don't get to them all, but I try to read them and respond to folks. And so if anybody out there has anything, that's great. And let's do a prayer real quick, a little silence to the young lady who was killed on the I-5 freeway. I'll tell you, when you're out there dancing in a place that's already been cordoned off for you to be able to do that, and somebody takes a weapon, in this case, a car, as a weapon, to do you physical and bodily harm because they disagree with your activism and your constitutional right to gather. It is sad, and we can't forget that there are people who are losing and have lost their lives in this movement that are Black and they're white and they're all races, and we're all in this together, and we have to take this seriously, and we have to fight, if anything, for them so that their passing wasn't in vain.
I appreciate that.
I think that's a beautiful note to let that one go on. I'm going to hold my last question, for your DMs later, because after a note like that, I don't want to ask you about secret societies or working with Shaq. So expect to see me in your DMs a little later. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, Hill, next time you're in the Seattle area, let's please catch up, grab a bite.
Absolutely. I'd love that.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, I hope everybody enjoyed that first segment with our special guest, Hill Harper. He dropped some gems. Right now, we get to talk about that and have our panel discussion, right?
Absolutely.
So we all had our takeaways from that. I'm going to start with Joey over here. Joey, what was a major takeaway from our discussion with Hill?
I would say one of the major takeaways that I had from it was perspective. He lent a very interesting perspective that I didn't think of when I asked him about what it means and what it takes to be a good ally to the Black community. And you saw in the interview, he suggested that we don't necessarily need allies, we need investors, is something that he said.
Man.
And learning a little bit about what that really means to invest in the community and invest in people in your community.
Yeah, I love that. Like, real talk. ever since we filmed that, I've used that line, Hill. I've dropped credit to you. I've given you credit on it, but difference between being an ally and being an investor. You know, we live in startup. One of the startup meccas on the West Coast or in the world, and I don't need you to be my friend when I start a new company. I need you to invest in that company, right? Two, part of that when he said that, and it's real, black people didn't create white supremacy, so why should we be in charge of trying to dismantle it, right? It was dope.
Yeah.
Noah, what was your takeaway?
My takeaway was how, there's so many, I think the divide in America, more people have a lot in common than they have differences. But right now, they're being exploited on the few differences. I think he was very right in our discussion that, poor America and minorities, they have a lot in common in underlying issues, whether they be climate issues, whether they be the private prison system. There's poor, certain groups of poor white people I know that think that they have nothing in common with, let's say, someone who is a minority from a different community, when you have a lot in common. And there's so much common ground there. And if we could bridge that gap and put aside those couple of differences and realize how much you have in common, that was one of my biggest takeaways. And I think we need to do more on that.
We do need to work on that. I agree. Joe, you think so?
I do. It was a heavy, hearty conversation. I'm really excited that you guys had the chance to.
And this was our first one.
Yeah.
Like we jumped out the gate
Coming
like
in hot.
hot and heavy
Yeah.
to where I wasn't ready for some of this conversation. I was like, we're gonna do a podcast. We're gonna keep it cool, and then we bring down Mr. Ivy League, and he starts dropping gems, and I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Like
Deep
a school
and
kid.
early. Deep and early.
So for me, one of the things I thought was dope is bringing up tort law and talking about the legal system and how we need to take advantage of the legal system the same way that wealthy white people do. When you have water companies and you have environmental, all these things that happen in poor areas, right? That would never happen in a suburb like a Bellevue in Seattle area or something along that lines, because people in those areas with money sue, right? Companies, the police, they take into account if we do X, Y, and Z in this area, there's a 70, 80% chance we're gonna get sued. If we do it in this area, only 15 or 20% are gonna do something. Well, we've already gotten them to accept that this is a part of their life. So I think we should take advantage of the legal system, and as much as it wasn't built for us, right, we should still force it to work for us, or at least keep them so inundated with lawsuits that it becomes a pain, enough of a pain in the butt that they want to change their ways, right? Mm-hmm. It's worked in big cities with, dumping of dirty water or cleaning, chemical companies. It could work when we're talking about the police. It could work on a lot of levels if we start bringing more and more class action suits and using the legal system to our advantage.
And I think that's a big part is that, we need to keep in mind that, I believe systemic racism exists. And a big part of what you're talking about is resources. There's a reason certain communities don't have the resources affluent communities have. And it's because there's systemic oppression to, remit resources from those areas. It's very calculated.
It's by design, absolutely.
It's by design, absolutely.
Exactly.
So, that resonated with me, and we need to spread the resources.
Well, we need to pull together.
Absolutely.
So that what little resources we have, we can come together collectively and use them, right?
Yeah,
so
there's so many people that are living right now in resource deserts in their own life.
Oh, absolutely.
That they have no idea that they are.
Absolutely. So, the good thing about social media, the good thing about a podcast like this, the good thing, when you get past all the fake news and all the BS, is that there are resources. We're going to try our best to share some of them. We're going to try our best to bring people on this platform that will give you a real life point of view, and they might be a person that's your neighbor, it might be a person that you see on TV, it might be an athlete you see on Sunday, but we're going to give you real life perspective, and that's down to earth as well. So, guys, we got through our first episode. What do you think?
Uno.
I think we did it.
We made it. Mama, we made it.
I think we have something here, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
So thanks for coming out and joining us. This is the Sound Table, and we're sounding off.